Today, you can go online, search around a bit, and then find videos of people with exotic animals as pets. But what is an exotic animal, and how do we differentiate? Hi, my name is Jess Kalina, and I believe that individually we should not own exotic animals. In this video, I will both define what an exotic animal is, as well as cover my reasons as to why you shouldn't own one. Now, depending on who you ask, definitions of exotic pet tend to go anywhere from a species not indigenous to the owner's locale to something that isn't a dog or a cat. For the sake of this video, however, let's just say that an exotic animal is one that you wouldn't find in a traditional American household. Okay, so these are going to be our sugar gliders, our chinchillas, and even our alligators at times. With that in mind, why can't I have one of those? What at its core is really separating the possibility of owning a cat compared to that of a fox? Well, as it stands, you're typically going to be more of a danger to it and it to you. But how? To answer that, let's talk about domestication. According to Jared Diamond, in his 1997's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, The Fates of Human Societies, an animal must meet a total of 6 core requirements in order to be domesticated. To surmise, those are 1. To be able to have a flexible diet. 2. To mature quickly. 3. To have the capacity to breed in captivity. 4. To have relatively docile dispositions. 5. To not panic when penned. And 6. To have a firm social hierarchy. And as it stands, the majority of animals that we consider exotic today, and often dream of as pets, simply do not meet these requirements, meaning that they're just not ready to be house animals, as that type of environment, more often than not, leads to their detriment than any real good. Now, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily impossible to keep in a household, mind you. I mean, you could theoretically place any animal inside a glass box and just call it a day. No, rather, when we talk about having a pet, we typically do so with this idea of interactivity and care to be able to easily provide for their needs and simultaneously being able to interact with them in one way or another. That being said, this is where the problem lies with our understanding of exotic animals. We are used to animals. Most people have one, and the majority of exotic animals that we look to as pets, we do so because outwardly they appear similar to things that we are generally familiar with. Because of this, many owners of exotic animals try to change the creature's nature so that it better suits their needs and their preconceptions of what a common domestic pet is. And it's here that you have people declawing, confining animals to cages that don't suit their needed environment, and even releasing them into the wild, where they become disruptors to entire ecosystems. And now I understand that all this is a lot to take in, and I kind of want to ground it a bit. So here's a real-life example starting way back in the old Soviet Union. It's the late 1950s, and a man by the name of Dmitry Belyaev believes that domestication can be replicated. And to prove so, he's going to use a close relative of the modern Canis familiaris, or the dog, to do so. In enters the fox. And fast forwarding to present day, their domestication lives on strong in Russia. Through roughly 60 years of this process, most of these foxes have been bred into a class known as elite. These are the friendliest of foxes, and while they'll be friendly to their owner, it's really not saying much. Foxes stink, they chew, they're destructive, they require large open spaces, they like to dig, and without the needs to forage and spread their scents met, they can even go on to develop behavioral problems, including fear and aggression. What's more, lacking a proper supplementary diet of taurine, foxes suffer from heart failure and ultimately die. The point to all of this is that this is an animal that has been domesticated professionally at the forefront of science for 60 years, and it is still having these issues. To just own one single fox would require an individual to adapt their entire lifestyle around accommodating their needs. And I mean, if this is what you can expect from that long of an approach, you can just imagine what other exotic animals lacking that time and effort must be like to care for. Furthermore, if you should fail to care for this animal, well, turning to a zoo or a sanctuary to take over for you is an option. However, the cost and the time that rehabilitation takes is often too high for these organizations, not to mention that many of them simply don't have either the space or the sheer manpower required to house all of these new, now unwanted pets, meaning that there's a decent chance your animal will then have to be abandoned or even euthanized. So what do? Honestly, you should just stick to getting a dog or a cat. Those animals are going to be much friendlier, and I can assure you, much less of a risk to care for overall. The next time you consider buying an exotic animal, just think back to domestication and on whether or not your choice to purchase is the right one, or just a spur of the moment rush. Because really, these animals should only exist out in the wild. I hope that you've had an enjoyable time, and thanks for watching.